Hello and welcome. This is Out Motorsports. My name is Jake and this is the 2021 Mazda MX-5 Miata. Now, enthusiasts have loved the Miata generally for decades. It has always been the enthusiast choice for a lightweight, nimble, inexpensive, great to drive sports car since it came out for the 1990 model year. I am one of those fanboys. Even though I don't own a Miata now, it was my first car that I bought when I turned 18. I owned a 1995 Miata. So I was very excited, as I always am, to get a week with another one that is brand new. But this is the first Miata that we've had on the channel with a soft top. The past two that we've had have both been the RF, which is called the retractable fastback, and Mazda offers that instead of, in days gone by, either a removable hardtop or a power retractable hardtop that disappears completely into the car's body. And while those are great options if you want the security of a folding hardtop, it's not really the full convertible experience that kind of adds to that overall Miata magic. So I was very excited to get a week with this one. This is, of course, the soft top version of the Miata, and we're going to talk about what it is, talk about how it is to drive, and go down a little bit of memory lane with my own 1995 Miata for comparison. Now, before we get too far into this, please take a second, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Most of you watching this video are not subscribed, and we would really appreciate the support if you do click that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. The more support we have from all of you, the more fun things we can do with cars like this Miata, a bunch of trucks and SUVs, motorsports, and everything in between. So thank you for your support. All right, so with all that, on to the Miata. Like I said, this is the 2021 Mazda Miata. This is part of what you would call the ND2 generation of Miata. This is the fourth generation of Mazda Miata since 1990. The first ones were called the NA, NB, NC. This is the ND, and that ND2 denotes the fact that it is the facelifted model of the ND. So these were updated a year or two ago, and they're considered the ND2. They got a power bump at that time. Mazda has not done anything super notable to this car for 2021. It makes the same 186 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque. And of course, in this case, it is paired to a 6-speed manual transmission. That is standard. A 6-speed automatic transmission is available. I'll link to the video right up here. We did review one of those last year in RF form, and I personally found it a little bit lackluster, but if you want to drive a Miata and would prefer the automatic, it is for sale. You can have one in this soft top form. Now, this car is the Grand Touring. It is the top trim level of the car. They offer the Sport and Club trims below it, and the starting price of these starts around 26 grand. This Grand Touring, with the extra cost paint and extra cost roof, comes in a little bit over 33 grand. So this is almost as fully loaded as you can get this car. There is an optional package for BBS wheels and Recaro seats that does add a little bit of extra cost if you'd like it, and this car does not have that package. But this is the Grand Touring. This is the fully loaded model. All that Mazda has done for 2021 is added a new paint color. They added this dark blue paint that's really pretty, and they also added a white leather interior option. Now, this car obviously has neither of those things present. This is called Snowflake White Pearl. It's about a $400 paint option, and this does also have the light gray roof, which is a $200 option over the standard black roof. Now, like I said, this one is a 6-speed manual, so with that, on the Grand Touring trim and on the Club trim, which is one level below this, you also get a standard limited slip differential, you get uprated dampers, and you get a front strut bar. So great of Mazda to do that. It's a little confusing because the base trim is called Sport, and you don't get the sporty bits on the Sport. You have to go to the Club, but that's not really new for 2021. They've had that kind of confusing trim level naming convention for a couple years at this point. All right, so first things first, let's get the roof down in this car. Like I said, these are fine cars to drive with the roof up, but they really come into their own, and you get that real nice roadster experience with the roof down. Now, Mazda has made this a very simple procedure. You just slide this little thumb tab forward, pull the handle back, that unlatches. If your windows are not down already, they will drop a little bit to accommodate, and then you just push up and push it down until you hear a click. Now, that is super duper simple. And then as far as getting the roof back up, there is one handle you pull here. It will release it up. There are 2 grab handles, one on the driver's side, one on the passenger side. And all you do is, you really don't need a lot of muscle for this, just pull straight forward and the roof comes back up to meet you. Now, I have noticed with this one, I have to push the latch back a little bit to make sure it doesn't bump anything, and then just like that. So it is really an easy procedure to put the roof up and down. And the other thing before we start driving, a lot of the time you want your tunes and you want them turned up pretty loud with the roof down. So for 2021, Mazda has added wireless Apple CarPlay to the 2021 Miata. The Miata had CarPlay and Android Auto for the past few years, but they did require you to plug in your USB cord. But for 2021, CarPlay is now supported as wired or wireless, so that's a nice little touch. Now, I'm actually not going to be using my iPhone for music today. I'm going to be using this. This is my iPod that I got when I went off to college in 2007. And this iPod has a playlist on it that is called Miata. So this thing still works. It still has music on it from college. It still has a Miata driving playlist that I made in 2008 when I bought that 1995 Miata and plugged it in to the stock tape deck head unit with a cassette adapter, and then later I think JVC kind of lousy aftermarket head unit that pushed all the sound through 2 really awful door speakers and some headrest speakers. Now, the 2021 Miata has a much better sound system in it. This one is a Bose branded system. Mazda still has headrest speakers. They are located right here on both sides of both headrests, and when you are using CarPlay or Android Auto, it will lower the volume of the other speakers, stop your music, and it will crank the volume on just the headrest speakers, so even with the roof down, you can hear your text messages being read or your navigation instructions or whatever the case might be. But in any case, this iPod still works. I still have the cord for it, and it will work if you plug it in to the 2021 Miata sound system. So I can't let you all listen to the music because copyright issues, but trust when I say it's plugged in, it's working, and I'm equal parts excited and horrified at the music taste that I had 14 years ago. So now, let's get this thing out on the road and have a nice little Sunday drive. All right, so driving the 2021 Mazda MX-5 Miata with the soft top and the 6-speed manual transmission. Like I said, we've had a few of these in for review before. They've both been the RF, which is that retractable fastback, and this one finally has that full soft top where you get the full Roadster convertible driving experience. I'm driving with the windows up just so you can hear me while I'm talking, but with the windows down, this is really just an immersive experience, and the car doesn't feel that big because it isn't. You don't feel like you're in a bathtub because you're not. This is, you know, very much the smallest car that Mazda could produce that would still meet safety regulations and, you know, modern crash test requirements and still be Miata-ish. And it is honestly about the same size as the first gen car, which is what I owned. I had that 1995 NA with the 1.8 liter, and they've managed to keep the size pretty similar. They've managed to keep the weight pretty similar. You know, every gram counts. They pulled weight out where they could and really thought about where they could keep weight out otherwise. And this car weighs under 2,400 pounds, which is really remarkable for a 2021 model year car that meets modern crash tests and fuel economy standards and all that good stuff. And, you know, I mentioned it makes 180 something horsepower and 150 something pound-feet. It is kind of immaterial how much power and torque it makes. It feels quick enough. It is better in that regard than the older cars were, but this is not a car you buy for the numbers. It's not a car you buy for the stats or the bragging rights. It's just a car that you buy because it's just so damn pleasant to drive. It's so fun. You know, these make any day better. They will put a smile on your face no matter what kind of day you're having, whether it's good or bad. And it's just the spirit of this is so fun, and they have kept it that way since 1990. And the other thing with this power level, you know, yes, it makes 180 something horsepower and the car weighs under 2,400 pounds. This is accessible horsepower. You can run through first and second gear and part of third even and not be going illegal, crazy speeds. You're just having a good time winding the car out. And that's part of why I think you're doing yourself a disservice to get the automatic that wants to keep everything as low as possible RPM-wise. Have the manual, learn to drive it well. If you're not really great at manual or don't know how to drive it in the first place, it is so worth it. And, you know, it's just a pleasure to drive this car, even though it's not the fastest thing in the world. It's worth mentioning also, it's not slow either. These cars used to feel a little bit slower back in the early days. You know, the early NAs in particular made about 100 horsepower by the time it got down to the rear wheels, and they didn't feel very quick. Whereas these do actually feel fast enough. You know, I don't really wish for more horsepower. I don't wish for a turbo. The engine pulls pretty strong all the way to redline, which I like. The redline in this car is a little beyond 7,000 RPM, and really pretty nice. And the gearbox is easy to deal with. The clutch is easy to deal with. It's not too heavy, not too light. Everything is just pleasant in here. The one thing that I have heard some people complain about in the ND compared to the earlier cars is the steering feel. Mazda went to electronic power steering in this car, and some people are claiming that it's kind of dead and lifeless. And, you know, it might be compared to the older cars, sure. Especially if you're going all the way back to the NA with manual steering. You didn't even get power steering on the early low option cars. Sure, does it feel worse? Does it feel less connected to the road, a little soulless is what one person said? Yeah, sure, but do I care? No, because this is the modern, brand new 2021 iteration of the car that was sold brand new in 1990. And that is something that a lot of people wish they could get that they really can't, you know, in modern day. How many people are telling you they wish they could buy a brand new E36 M3, a brand new 2000 Civic Si? You can't buy those anymore, but this is a brand new 1991 Mazda Miata. Like, it really does feel close enough to that, but they've fixed all the things that made the early cars so much of a pain to live with, and that is, you know, the convertible tops, the lack of insulation and the, you know, plastic window on the back, the lack of a decent sound system, the fact that air conditioning saps all the power away. All these little things that made the early Miatas really fun but a little challenging to live with on a day-to-day basis have been fixed, and where Mazda kind of went a little far to the right with the NC, the third generation Miata, and a lot of people claim those cars were too heavy, too ponderous, oh, it's just a short RX-8, which, you know, was the case. Those were still good to drive, and those felt very civilized, but they weren't quite as playful compared to this. This feels very light on its feet, very eager to please. The NC feels a little bit more like a mini GT car where it wants to be, you know, your better highway cruiser. These are okay on the highway. They will not beat you up. They are pretty comfortable, but this one is just the best Miata that they have made to date. So really, you know, it's an enjoyable car. It is a very fun car, and if you like lightweight, fun, tossable sports cars, you really owe it to yourself to check this out if you haven't already. I do have to mention the seats in this car are fine. You can get the upgraded Recaro seats if you get that package. These still are not cars for tall people. I am almost 6'2", and I fit in here because I am forcing myself to fit in here because the car is just that good to drive. But I would have a hard time living with this on a day-to-day basis based on my torso versus leg ratio. So again, you know, it's one of those things where you really need to try it for yourself and see how you fit, and also consider the cloth seats versus the leather seats versus the Recaro seats. They will all fit your body a little bit differently. For me, these leather seats don't really work, and I find myself having to sit upright enough so that I can get the seat back enough so that I can, you know, really get my legs in a comfortable position. Oh, God, it's just so good. There are other modern drop tops and other modern rear-wheel drive 6-speed manual cars that are good to drive, but nothing gives you this experience. And I'm just so glad that in 2021, you know, the decade of the crossover, Mazda has managed to sell this and figure out how to continue selling it, and just, it still exists. We should all be so happy that this car exists. The other aspect of this, like I said, I own that 1995 Miata. I had it for about 6 years. It carried me all through college and then into the real world. And this has been a hell of a nostalgia trip, driving a car at 31 years old that, you know, feels like the modern version, the grown-up version of what I drove at 18 years old. I learned to drive on a Ford Escape and an Infiniti sedan that were, you know, good cars, nice cars, but not fun cars. And it was such a wild thing for me to go drive 3 hours away, get on the interstate in my 95 Miata that I had just bought. I could barely drive stick shift. My dad was behind me in the Infiniti, tailing me up I-95 with tractor trailers all around, and I was hunkered down in this little tiny car, just thinking, oh my goodness, what have I done with my life? This is so small. And that car opened my eyes to what fun driving was. It opened the door to motorsport for me. It is the car I first autocrossed. It is the car I first got on a racetrack and did high performance driver education. And having this as its modern day analog, and doubly so with my iPod, with my music from all those years ago cranked on the sound system, is just, it's really a trip for me. So I appreciate what this is, because as much as this car has changed over the years and the decades, it has also stayed the same, and it is the better for it. All right, that is it for this review of the 2021 Mazda MX-5 Miata Soft Top Grand Touring with 6-speed manual transmission. As always, thank you so much for coming along. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel right here on YouTube. And if you'd like to give us a follow on other social media, we can be found at Out Motorsports on Facebook and Instagram. If you would like to join a community of LGBT automotive enthusiasts and motorsports competitors, please head over to outmotorsports.com. We have a whole community over there, and we would love to have you join us. In the meantime, please stay safe, be well, and we'll see you again soon.